warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Today, inshallah, we're going to continue our discussion of Surah Fatiha. And I was going to start with saying a couple of things that I forgot to mention last time, but they'll come up again. They're kind of minor anyway. So today, inshallah, I'd like to begin and talk about the word Rabb. That's the next word that comes after Alhamdulillah. The word get Rabbil Alameen. And so last time we talked about, how the word it's precise in its way that, shows Allah's, and that He's worthy of praise and gratitude, and it's eternal, and it's not dependent upon me and you. And so now, after, starting off introducing Himself as such, Allah puts His first attribute there. And it's really important for us to understand this to at least some depth, because the first attribute of Himself that Allah used was Rabb. And, amongst, different attributes that Allah has, it's one of the few that, demands a relationship between someone else, between Allah and us. Because you think of, another attribute of Allah, like Al-Alim, is, Allah is, entirely knowledgeable and encompassing of His knowledge. He doesn't really have a relationship with us directly like that. Although, Allah knows everything that happens to us, that immediate relationship is not, drawn just by the word itself. But the word Rabb does that. And, our entire lives are basically different types of relationships, right? You've got, husband and wife. You've got parents and child, right? You've got the boss and the, you can speak, employee, right? You've got teacher and, victim, right? That's what happens to the Ross, right? You just get Ross. But, our entire lives are basically different types of relationships. And so if we have the word Rabb, the word, the best one, it has many different sub-connotations. I want to just mention them, and I'll talk about a few of them. But before I translate what, what the word Rabb means, it has 5 different sub-connotations. And, I can put these on Facebook so you don't have to memorize them, but we're going to talk about a couple of them. First is that Allah is also Al-Malik, the owner. He's a Sayyid, the one in charge. Rabbi, the one who takes care of something. The one in the store of gifts. And Al-Qayyim, the one who keeps something alive, prevents it from dying. Right? Allah also has those qualities. We'll talk about a couple of them. But those are all sub-meanings of the word Rabb. The first primary meaning of Rabb is master. And intentionally, and my teacher as well taught me not to translate this as Lord. That's how normally you will see this, right? Alhamdulillah, all praise and thanks belongs to the Lord of the worlds, right? And we'll talk about, why master is more suited, because one, Lord is like a biblical term. It has different types of connotation as well. But also it doesn't directly imply the type of relationship that the Arabs understood the word Rabb to mean. Like in classical Arabic, Rabb, it demanded another party as well. And that was Abd. And that's slave. Like Abd is slave. And so Allah has that relationship between me and you. It's an immediate and it's precise. And it's important for us to understand, the terms of that relationship. Because, this is one that, I'll another story about my teacher, Ustad Naman. He was studying with his teacher, Dr. Abbasi, and they're having like a private session, one-on-one. And, in the middle of the session, he closed his book, and he was like, Naman, tell me the summary of the whole Quran. Just like one or a couple of sentences or two, give it to me. And Ustad Naman was like, it's not like, that's kind of like an epic thing to ask for, just like, from how long they've been studying. And so he thought about it, and he said, basically what the Quran is trying to get us, he said, he remembers his teacher used to say this a lot in different talks. The Quran is trying to get us to accept Allah as Rabb, and then accept ourselves as His slaves, as Abd, right? That's basically one of the main primary messages of the Quran. There's a difference between knowing that Allah is our master, right? That's easy, I can say that, and we can all understand. That's like a knowledge we have, and that we should be His slaves and worship Him, right? But accepting is a whole different thing. Accepting it to the point that you understand that Allah knows what's better for you, that He makes the decisions, right? He's a Sayyid. He makes decisions. He's the one in charge. Then me and you, our job is to obey Him in that way, right? To accept that and to live our lives like that is a whole different thing, And it's not like, me and you blindly follow everything that Islam, says, right? Because we have different, other faiths. They call themselves faith. They have faith. And they usually use Islam, you just believe, But our knowledge in Islam, we have iman, right? We have belief with knowledge. That this makes sense to us. That we understand that Allah is one, and that He's our master, and that He, is one who created us, and all those things. We understand all of that, and it makes sense to us in a deep way. And and that's really important because Islam actually encourages questions. If you don't understand something in religion, it's important. It's actually almost obligatory on ourselves to go and find out what that means and to have it explained to us. But at the end of the day, if we and you had accepted this book to be true, and the Prophet ﷺ to be a true prophet, anything that comes with it is something that we should understand that we should be obeying this. And if we're not, we should look at why we're not and try to fix that. Because when we, if someone asks us, why do you fast the month of Ramadan? We list different things like, it's good, it teaches us, to have taqwa, it brings us closer to Allah, it helps us control our nafs, other things off the top of my head, it helps us, it helps us to feel more appreciative for the things we have. It has a lot of benefits like that. But we don't say the first primary reason me and you do anything in this religion is because Allah asked us to. He told us to fast the month of Ramadan. He told us to pray 5 times a day, right? And so whether me and you understand the benefit of something, at the end of the day, it's something Allah asks us to do. And so, out of Allah's wisdom, that some of the things He commanded us to do, He told us the benefit of it, right? And some things He didn't mention it. Because you could ask as many scholars you wanted, no one will be able to tell you why we pray 3 rakats for Maghrib and why we pray 2 rakats for, Fajr. It's something that, it's what the Prophet ﷺ told us to do, right? It's something that Allah knows. We don't really know the exact reason we do it like that. But there's some of the things that Allah told us why, it's beneficial for us to do this. Actually, I'll use a different example. Alcohol is forbidden for us, right? And you can list many, many things that are wrong with alcohol, right? It causes people to drive drunk. People, it causes, most of the cases of domestic violence occur because of this. People do other types of violence. Destroys your liver, destroys your bodies. You learn about this in med school, right? But it's really amazing how Allah explains to us why it's wrong in the Quran, right? This is in Surah Baqarah, ayah 217. And so Allah talks about it. He says, "Yasalunaka anil khamri wal maisir." They ask you about wine and maisir, like games of chance, like basically gambling, right? That's what they call it, right? They come and they ask you about these two things. So Allah tells the Prophet ﷺ, He says, "Fihima ithmun khabir." In them, fihima ithmun khabir. There's immense sin in it. That's what Allah says. Ithmun khabir, kabir, not khabir, kabir. There's immense sin in it, right? Well, manafi'un lin-nas. Then He said, there's some benefit for some people as well. Right? It's amazing that Allah even acknowledged it. That these things that people get addicted to, gambling and drinking, He says there could be some benefit for you as well. You could have fun playing these games of chance, a little bit of alcohol, people could have some fun with that. Allah, it's really amazing that Allah didn't say, oh, it's wrong, and it's completely like that. But He understands the human being. It shows that Allah understands His creation. He says you could derive some sort of pleasure out of this, right? But then Allah said, وَإِثْمُهُمَا أَكْبَرُ مِنْ نَفْعِهِمَا. Allah said the sin in it is bigger than its benefits. Right? Allah didn't compare the good and the bad with it, right? We derive the evils of alcohol later on. Allah didn't say these are the good things you get out of alcohol, this is the bad. And the bad outweighs the good. He said, here's some of the good things you think you get out of alcohol. Then Allah said, but I am telling you it has immense sin in it. And He equated it with His worship, right? Because we don't drink alcohol, not because of those things first and primary, the bad things that happen because of alcohol. We don't drink alcohol because Allah said it's sinful. He told us what's right and wrong. He told us how we should behave, how we should worship Him, and He defined what's a good human being. And according to Allah, alcohol is forbidden because Allah said so. That's the way we should live our lives, right? The benefits and the good things that we get about it, they're there to motivate us to do things, right? The idea of the idea of Jannah, right? We should obey a lot. There's many different types of hadith. Obeying Allah is something that Allah is worthy of, whether it was Jahannam or Jannah, whether they exist or not. Right? But Allah gives us incentives. Why? Because they're good things that we should go for it. And that's not like a low aspiration to have aspiration for Jannah. The Prophet ﷺ, everyone asked to go to Jannah. It's something that we should aspire to, right? But the primary reason me and you do anything is because Allah is the one who created us and He's our God. He's our master. And this is something me and you acknowledged a long, long time ago. And I didn't get to ask Umar Mirza because I was going to ask you before we started. Umar Mirza recited an ayah in Surah Al-Iraq, right? And in this ayah, Allah mentions that before me and you were put onto earth and all the souls had been created, Allah mentioned that He gathered all the souls from Adam alayhi salam to the end of mankind, right? He gathered everyone. And He asked them a very simple question. Alastu bi rabbikum? Am I not your master? All the things Allah could have asked Him. He didn't ask Him, am I the one who created you? I'm the one who forgives sins. He used this attribute. He asked Him a very simple question. Alastu bi rabbikum? Am I not your master? And then all of us testify for sure that all of us did that. And Allah says it in the Quran. It's true that all of us testified that. And then the next thing that Allah does, He tells us why He asked us. So that He says that so we and you wouldn't come on the day of judgment and say that we were profiting about this, that we didn't know this happened. amazing thing is that none of us remember that, right? I don't, none of us do. None of us remember Allah asking us that question. None of us remember responding to it, right? But as I mentioned, the Surah Fatiha is a Surah of the Fitrah. Because that question and its response left an impact on our hearts. And that's what the Fitrah is. That we and you, we're pre-programmed to acknowledge that truth. That there's one God, and He's our Master, and that we should worship Him. That's inside all of our hearts. At some level, that exists for every single human being, whether people acknowledge it or not. Because the word kafir, it's not like, this person disbelieves in Islam. I mean, that's what it means, that's what we know it to mean. But its meaning is so beautiful. In ancient Arabic, the word kafir meant, it just meant farmer. It just meant this was a farmer. Why? For a specific reason. They took a seed, and they put it in the ground, and they covered it up, right? And, they buried it, basically, right? The word kafir is used to refer to a disbeliever, not because they don't know that Islam is true, because at some basic level, that has to be in their heart. This idea, this fitrah, the oneness of Allah, has to exist in their heart. But they've buried it deep in there, and they've covered it up, and they won't acknowledge it. That's what the word kafir really means. And this happened for all of us. That Allah asked us this question, and we responded. And this is something also the Prophet ﷺ teaches us. Have you guys heard this hadith that everyone's born a Muslim? Right? Everyone is born a Muslim, and then their parents terminate them as Christian or Jew, etc., right? Actually, that's not actually what the hadith literally says, that everyone is born a Muslim. The hadith from Rasulullah ﷺ, that every child is born on the fitrah. And this gets translated to mean Islam because Islam is a deen of fitrah. It's a deen of fitrah, right? But that's what the Prophet ﷺ told us, that everyone is born with that innate nature, to know the oneness of Allah and want to obey Him. And so, now I'm just going to talk about just a few of the qualities that the sub-meanings of the word Rabb, and how they really impact our lives. Because Allah is a matter. Right? He's the one who owns, right? This will come up again in a couple eyes down when Allah says Maliki Yawmiddin. But He's the one who owns us, right? Right? Because there's a relationship, right? If Allah is the owner, we're the ones who are owned, right? And so if you think about the things me and you own, right? Like I have like a laptop, right? It's mine. This is my property. I own this laptop, right? And over time these things kind of get old, right? And I may not treat it very well anyway. Like it's got crumbs in it. I don't clean it all the time. It may get like some spyware or something, like whatever. It's just running a little slow, right? I don't really take that great care of it, right? And so when it breaks down, or like when it just gets a little old, what do I do with it? I can just toss it, right? I can buy a new laptop, right? So what prevents like a laptop activist from coming up to me saying you can't treat the laptop like this? It's a laptop. What prevents that, right? What would I say to them? It's mine. I own it. It belongs to me, right? Back in the day, people had like animals, right? Like say you have a goat and a farmer is milking it, right? And he gives it milk for some years, right? And then after a while it gets old and it stops giving it milk. And so he's like, okay, it's like, well, I'll have it for dinner then. I'll just slaughter it and I'll eat it. And so no one can tell him you can't do this with this animal, right? Because he owns this animal. It belongs to him, right? And we should remember that me and you, we're Allah's property. But the way Allah treats us is so beautiful. Because when we do disobey Allah, when we make Him angry and we don't listen to Him, it's not like we get, nothing immediately happens to us. Allah lets it slide. He's like any other owner, any other master out there, right? When we do Allah, it's from the sunnahs of Allah, and when we commit a sin, regardless of how large it is, Allah delays that punishment for us for a time. Right? He doesn't immediately punish us, so we can make tawbah, right? And out of His immense mercy, He may never even call us to task for it. It's an amazing quality that Allah has. He doesn't treat people like any other master or slave, right? Because this master-slave relationship, I think that's one of the reasons oftentimes it doesn't get translated as slave. Many times you read translation, it'll just say servant, right? Of Allah is like the servant of Allah, right? But being a slave of Allah is a high quality. It's something you should aspire for. It's a noble thing to be. If you look in the Quran, all the times where Allah refers to the Prophet ﷺ in the Quran is most often by titles, like Ya Ayyuhal Muzammil, Ya Ayyuhal Mudaththir, Ya Ayyuhan Nabi, right? But how does Allah refer to the Prophet ﷺ in the beginning of Surah Surah? Right? Subhanalladhi asra bi abdihi layla. How glorious and how majestic is the one who took his slave on the night journey. This is a title that Allah gave the Prophet ﷺ. This is an amazing thing that we should aspire to be. We should live to be like that. We should want to die upon this. That we die as Abdullah. Right? As the slaves of Allah. It's an amazing thing to be. It's not, Obviously, yes, like, in terms of society, if anyone being the slave of another human being is, a compromising situation. But to be the slave of Allah is something you should love to be. It's the best things we can possibly be, And so, that's an idea of, like, the way Allah owns us, basically, He's not like any other master out there. And another beautiful thing is, like, Allah is also, one of the seven names of God is unlimited, the restorer of gifts. If you think about it, even in common times, like, a master and a slave type relationship, anything that the master gives his slave, it's a gift, right? He doesn't have to do anything for him. The slave has to do whatever he wants, right? But Allah is unlimited. He's the restorer of gifts. And this word gifts is really important for me to understand. Because anything we have, our bodies, our families, anything that exists for us in our lives is a gift from Allah. Like, alhamdulillah, I have 2 hands. These are gifts from Allah. I didn't ask for these. I was born with this. And so if one day Allah was, He was to take one of my hands away, this is not something I can complain about. Because from the beginning, this was a gift that Allah gave me. And this is something that Allah tests people with. If He, sometimes withdraws things that He has given them initially. Like, family members, things like that. All of us will lose people over time. Either we'll be the ones lost, or we'll lose the people around us that we love. And Allah tests different people in different ways. And that's, it's something that's within Allah's wisdom to do so. And it's not something we should ever question. Because, alhamdulillah, a lot of us here, we live in a lot more excess and abundance than most people in the rest of the world. And we should always remember that does not mean that Allah loves us more than the people in Syria and Palestine that go through a lot more difficulties than me and you. It does not mean that Allah loves us more because He gives us more. Allah tests people based on their capacity. And it potentially very realistic could be that Allah is, out of His love for those people, Allah puts them through different trials so He can elevate their rank. And me and you should remember that me and you, when we live here in this kind of excess, and me and you, become extravagant, and we sort of, go beyond the boundaries of Allah, imagine just have a punishment, the way Allah could question us about this. And I gave you so much, and you still disobeyed me. We should put perspective in our lives. And we should understand that this is something that Allah has done out of His own wisdom, where me and you live, and the things that we are given. We should never feel that we're better than other people just because of what we are given from Allah. These are all gifts from Allah. That's Allah is unlimited. He's the one who gives us different gifts. And inshallah, I want to do Al-Alameen, and it's something I'll only take like a few minutes next time, inshallah. And then we'll do Ar-Rahman and Rahim as well. But this quality that Allah has given us, this ability in our hearts to acknowledge Him as well, and to live like that. It's one of the most amazing gifts Allah has given us. This love in our heart for His deen. After this, that He made us to love this religion. He made us to love being like this. It's not something that puts much immense stress and burden on ourselves. Sometimes it feels like that. Initially, when you begin to understand, and you begin to think about more that Allah wants what's best for us, right? He's also the Murabbi, the one who takes care of us as well. The one who takes care of us and provides everything for us, right? It's not just sustenance that Allah provides us, right? He provides us with knowledge, the way we should live our lives, and so much more that He gives us. It's an amazing thing that just at the beginning of the surah, this is what Allah first decides to introduce Himself with. That He's our Rabb, that He's our master, we're His slaves. And like I said earlier, this is something that we should want to die on this. This is how we should die. In a state that we're pleasing to Allah, in a state that we are obedient to Him.